I'm gonna install a couple different products on the GTR in the front right now. We've got the switchback turn signals, and those just need to tap into the running light and the turn signal. So I'm gonna show you the fastest way to get to that. And while I'm at it, since I'm tapping into the turn signal bulb, I'm gonna replace the original with an LED, and then they'll flash at the same exact rate. So we'll dive into it. I'm gonna show you some little tricks how you can do this install without taking the whole front end apart. I'm gonna show you the way to do it so you can do it yourself. I would recommend actually, if you are gonna have the lights taken off or the bumper removed, you can do this a little bit, maybe cleaner, a little bit nicer. This is the way you can do it in your driveway. It's the way that anybody can do it. So take what I show you with a grain of salt. It's not necessarily like the way I would prefer to do it, but it's a way that you can quickly and easily take a cool part and just install it yourself. So let's get to it. Before we start, I'm just gonna lift up the car a tiny little bit so that I can access underneath the fender liner right here, as well as the fender liners up top. What my goal is gonna be is to take enough of the clips off so that I can get my hand up behind, twist the turn signal bulb off, and then turn it down and make the wires accessible here so that we can tap into that turn signal wire and the running light wires, which are currently feeding the side markers. I'm gonna take a couple clips off on the bottom right here, just so that I have a little bit more pull this way. And there's only 4 clips that I gotta take off. So I have the world's smallest screwdriver. I'm just gonna use it to access these little screws right here. A couple things that are gonna hold the fender liner down. These clips are already pretty messed up on the side marker, so it's kind of taped into place. Just gonna pop it back out. That clip, when it's bent, never gonna be as good as it should have been. So this thing's always gonna wanna pop out now, but we're getting rid of it anyway, so it's all good. So here's our wires for the parking lights. This is gonna be power and ground. On the other side, I believe the wire is green, but basically you can access the wires right here without even messing with any of the tape. And now we can actually tap into those. And we have one more wire to tap into from the turn signal wire. So I'm pushing the fender liner down right here so that I can get to the back of the headlight here and twist out the turn signal bulb. That's our turn signal wire. So the one that we're gonna wanna tap into is gonna be the green and black stripe. Now the black and red stripe, that's actually the ground wire. So if we put a couple little T-taps on here, we can plug a load resistor in, and then we can actually run without a bulb or with an LED bulb, and the car will not think that the bulb is out, which means you eliminate the hyper flash, and it just does the slow, steady flash that we want. So here's our new LED bulb, and the big difference with it over the stock bulb is that it's not an ugly orange color that reflects around the headlights. So you get what a lot of people call egg yolk when you have the stock bulb in there. This is just a nice silver bulb with LEDs on it. It just kind of blends in, kind of matches the chrome, everything else that's in there. And so just with the bulb in there, even with it off, it already looks better. But then the nice thing about it is that when it actually flashes, it's instant on full power and instant off. Versus this little guy who's kind of got like a warm up where it like fades in, fades out. So since we're installing LEDs right here that change with the turn signal and they're instant, we're matching this bulb with them. So everything flashes on and off at the same exact pace. It's just gonna look cleaner once it's done, and it'll look better with the car just sitting, even with the lights off. So the only way that you can get rid of this bulb is if you simulate the power that this thing takes, and you have to do that with a load resistor. Super common. This is not like techie stuff. People have been selling load resistors and LED bulbs together for a long time, and it's just so that you trick the car into thinking that you haven't changed the stock bulb out. So it assumes that everything's fine because it sees the same amount of power being pulled from this guy, but from these combination of parts right here. So all I'm gonna do, and again, I said this is the quick and easy way. This is kind of like the quick and dirty way of making this happen. I'm gonna plug these 2 wires in, power and ground. It does not matter which side connects to what. All that it matters is that I connect them to power and ground. So I'm gonna put the ground wire here, the power wire there, plug them in, and that will trick the car into thinking that there's no longer a bulb that's out, even if I don't put anything back in. So I'm gonna do that first, then I'm gonna tap into these wires right here for the running lights, and we'll continue. First step is a very, very handy tool. It's a T-tap. It's a very small, simple part that just goes right around the wire, and then once it's being held in place, you crimp it down, and now it's a T-tap straight into that wire. So now if I just plug a regular plug connector into it, and I can unplug it anytime, it's not like the little two thing where you have to put the wires side by side and crimp the thing down and then it's kind of permanently fixed on there. This is an easy, quick disconnect if you need to. So I'm gonna do that for power and ground for my load resistor. Then I'm gonna plug it in and tape it so that it sits out of the way. So again, it doesn't matter which side I plug in, just as long as both sides are plugged in. And now I'm gonna want this to be in place and out of the way along this wire. So I'm actually gonna do it something like that. So I'm gonna put a piece of tape here and up here, and now this won't be sitting in direct contact with anything, and it'll have the air from behind the fender liner, just in case if it's flashing for a long time, these things will heat up, that it's not sitting right against an important piece of plastic, such as the side of the headlight. You never want to mount this thing to a thin piece of plastic because the heat will cause damage. So with the load resistor just, loosely hung in there, again, this is driveway style. This is not soldering everything on and doing it super clean and bolting this to metal. This is just getting the job done in a way that's not going to cause problems, but there's always a better way. So now we can use the turn signal bulb, and you can feel it actually slide into place. Sometimes they'll even make a clicking noise when you push them in. But as long as that thing's not loose, you know that it's not going to fall out inside the headlight. So I need to get a little bit more slack in here. So I'm going to reach behind the light, and I can feel the way that the light or the wire is routed down. It just had a little tab right there that it was holding on to. So now that we have this extra slack, I'm going to pinch on the sleeving and make sure that I have the wires pushed down to one side, because I don't want to cut them on accident while I open up this shielding. Okay, so this is ready to go. Next step is to T-tap these wires. And last thing, we don't need this little connector anymore from the original side marker. So I'm just gonna unplug it. And we are ready for the module. The module, the idea here is simple. We're just gonna plug in our power and ground right here, and then we're gonna tape this module right to the factory connector, because we know that this connector is in place in a way that we can access it for the side marker anytime, which is exactly what we want from the module. We want to be able to plug the side marker in right here where the side marker normally installs at. So we're going to connect those two there, and then this wire we're going to wrap around from the back side, and we're going to connect that to the T-tap that we put in for the turn signal wire. So now it's connected to turn signal. Black wire is going to go to black. And then this is a great example of something you should always check when you're plugging in these type of connectors. When they're crimped, they can kind of lose their center position. So you kind of want to push them back up, bend them with your fingernail, just make sure it's right back in the middle. And then it's going to make perfect contact inside of the T-tap. So once that's back through, we're going to want to make sure that it's sitting out of the way so it doesn't get pinched in the fender liner. And it's okay if this thing is hanging down a little bit lower. One more little piece of tape I'm going to add right here to keep that wire out of the way. And then we're all ready. And the last step is our side marker. So before we do the absolute last step and snap it into place, we're gonna plug it in, and then we can either let it dangle or we can just loosely, I wouldn't recommend letting it dangle, but loosely fit it in place. We're gonna turn it on, check the function of white for the running light, and then I'll do amber for the turn signal as well. So last step is, the best thing to do is put dielectric grease in here and there. If you don't have any dielectric grease and you have some black tape, then good advice here, just go ahead and wrap this little JST 2-pin connector with some tape, just so that when you wash your car down, it doesn't get a big blast of water right on these little wires here. Clip it into place. We're all good to go.